DNVR Draft Pod, presented by Natures of Colorado, the Northeastern Colorado dispensary providing top-quality cannabis and a wide variety of products. Remember to use that code DNVR online or mention DNVR in store or drive-through. I'm Justin Michael. I'm here with Jake Schwanitz and Henry Chisholm. We've got a lot to dive into. We're going to get into some team-building takeaways from the Super Bowl here at the top. Daniel Jeremiah recently dropped his top 50. I guess that's been about a week and a half, but we hadn't had a chance to get into it yet. There's new PFF action, which has a big trade for the Broncos, some chaos in an NFL Network mock, and we're going to look at some mid-round targets that could fall for the Broncos. First things first, how's it going, guys?
Can't complain. Well, I guess I can. Chiefs won the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, that part's kind of tough.
I mean, at least we're here. You know, shout out to our guy, Dre. He's got a sick kiddo at home. Mm-hmm. Hopefully she's feeling much better tomorrow. That's always tough. But I think that's a good place to start. Obviously, the Chiefs now 3-time Super Bowl champions. They tie the Denver Broncos. That one stings. Elway has to give them the trophy. That stings even more. What are some takeaways that we can get from this, though? Because, I mean, obviously, they are the face of the division. They're the face of the NFL. They are the roadblock that prevents Denver from getting to where they need to be going forward. So, you know, what can we take away from this, especially, you know, these last couple of years?
Yeah, the big takeaway to me is that it's just a bad time to be in the AFC West. Like that's probably the worst team that they're going to have in quite a while, and they still won the Super Bowl. More realistically, though, I guess I thought coming into it that the path for the 49ers was for their defensive line to win, and they did that. I think that defensive line was really good, and it kept that offense down for a long time. And still, like, Mahomes gets away sometimes and he shakes them up, does whatever he does. But I do think that coming out of that game, if there was one thing I saw that worked from the 49ers, it's having just studs all over that defensive front.
Mm-hmm. Kind of the same for me. Specifically, it's the linebacking core, though. This game was a totally different game when Drake Greenlaw was in as opposed to when he got hurt and was injured and Oren Brooks goes in there. Just having those guys at linebacker who can kind of shut down stuff sideline to sideline, I feel like it really limited their offense, and they had a guy to pick on once Drake Greenlaw went down. So I know Denver's kind of tried to skate by, I guess, at linebacker for the last few years or so. They haven't really invested a lot of money or premium picks in there. But Broncos did kind of shut down Mahomes when he came to Denver this year too. So
I'm glad you guys brought that up because I feel like my takeaway is somewhat of in between you two, but it's essentially that sustained success still has to come through the draft. And when you talk about some of these guys, they're all homegrown. And you look at these Chiefs draft classes these last couple of years, Isaiah Pacheco, you know, being able to land some of these. Karlaftis obviously was huge, getting him in the second round. Like, that's the difference between being able to sustain it or having a flash of pan in the success, you know. And right now, I just feel like whether it's linebacker or quarterback or anything else, we've tried to just kind of plug and patch and put a Band-Aid here and some duct tape here. And, you know, oh, we're so close if we can just get over this. When in reality, if you don't have a quarterback and you don't draft well for a sustained period of time, you're just not going to be relevant. And when you look at this roster that Denver has built these last couple of years, like, forget quarterback. Look at the other 10 positions and the gap between the Chiefs and the Niners and the Broncos. So to me, I mean, I guess it is a little bit reaffirming. We've always been that, you know. I understand that there have been teams that have been able to mortgage, you know, their futures for short-term windows and they found success, whether it's the Rams or the Buccaneers. You can do that, but it's not a long-term method. And when, you know, you look at the Broncos' path forward, you got to think long-term because Mahomes ain't going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that you can look at the Broncos roster and almost just see, like, the rift in it, where it's like you have Justin Simmons and Cortland Sutton and Garrett Bowles, but there should be another class of those guys right behind them and right behind them and you just don't really have that. Like, you have, like, your Jonathan Cooper, who it's like he's playing well. You got something that, like, you have some of those sorts of guys, but, like, Jerry Jeudy just hasn't really panned out, you know. Damari Mathis, Riley Moss, like, you would love to have something out of that group too. You know, Caden Stearns, it's not his fault that he's been hurt, but, like, you would hope that he'd be somebody you look at. And it's just been ever since the Super Bowl, really, that they've had a problem and they've just been able to find a way to patch it with an NFL player, like a person who belongs on NFL roster, but now they're just lacking, game changers, people who
Impact players.
Exactly. And so like you can go sign your Ben Powers because you have a hole at guard. He's fine. He should be a starter in the NFL, but he isn't somebody who's pushing you to be winning. And so now you just have this roster filled with guys you've brought in to kind of plug holes. And so you plug the holes, but it just isn't enough to actually win anything.
I think now more than ever, though, you have that tangible proof that you have to change that mentality. Mm-hmm. You guys said, I think you nailed it at the beginning. This is the worst Chiefs team of the Mahomes era. They're very beatable. I know the defense is much better than some of those years past, but offensively, I mean, we saw them all year. They were nothing special. Like, and I don't know. I just, if you couldn't get them this year, like, when are you going to get them?
It's demoralizing.
Yeah. And it makes sense that this is the first time in the Mahomes era that the Broncos beat them. Mm-hmm. Like, if they were to beat one of these teams, you would think it would be this one.
Yep.
Any other takeaways before we move on here? Get into some of the prospect talk?
Just, I mean, it's not breaking news here, but just look at the overall talent of those two teams and kind of what Hank said. We need blue chips. We need impact players.
Well, I mean, if you put PS2 aside, like, who is the last like really impactful draft pick? And you could look at the Chiefs and the 49ers with Isaiah Pacheco and Brock Purdy, and obviously those are outliers, but they're getting better production out of 7th-round picks than we are out of our mid-round picks. And I know we're going to get into it at the end, so I don't want to really spoil that. Some, top 50, top 75 guys we hope are going to be there in that 3rd round range. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the big takeaway from me is you got to have a quarterback, but ultimately team building, it's still old-fashioned, man. Like, you can trade all the picks, you can sell the farm, but it isn't going to work long-term.
Those are the Broncos' 2 problems, the quarterback and the rest of the team.
Other than that, things are great. All right. Well, we got a comment here. If possible, move down, collect more picks. I think that's a good segue because obviously the big mock that has been circling the webs these last couple of days, they focused on it on the Broncos pod. I highly recommend you go check that out if you missed that conversation as well. Not right now, of course, later on.
Yes.
But PFF has the Broncos trading up to 2, swapping with the Commanders. The Commanders receive Denver's 2024 first-round pick. That would be the 12th pick. A 2025 first-round pick, a 2025 second, and a 2026 first. The Broncos obviously get the number 2 pick, with which they are selecting Drake Maye in this draft after Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall to the Bears. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, one jumps out to you. I mean, yes, you're solving your quarterback issue, at least in theory. I mean, you have to hit on them.
To solve it.
Yes. So I understand the move from that sense, but I'll be honest, after finally getting some draft capital back after being so stretched thin these last couple of years, I don't know if this is the move. I mean, you're going to be so strapped financially with the cap situation because of Russ. It's going to be tough to build a competitive team even with a rookie scale quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, I said on the podcast, this is basically the Trey Lance trade, except
the compensation's about right to go from 12 to 2.
Yep, exactly. And the difference is they went 12 to 3 instead of 12 to 2, and it was for a 3rd round pick instead of a 2nd round pick. That's the one change. But yeah, if you want to give this all up to go get Caleb Williams, I'd be down because I like the gamble there. Like, there's a chance it really pans out. With Drake Maye, I'm just not confident enough that it works out. I think he's an NFL quarterback. I'm not convinced that he's like a game-changing high end, that sort of guy.
Yep.
Like, even if he's Justin Herbert, I don't know that I like the trade. Like, I think that he needs to be even better than that to be worth it. And so with all the other holes, it just doesn't seem like a good deal to me.
I'm right there with you. If you do make a move, I think you have to set your eyes at the very top. Try and go get Caleb or try and get whoever Sean and the team has as QB1. But we just went over it. There's so many things that this team needs. I feel like we could get better both sides of the trenches. We can get another corner opposite of PS2. We can get more wide receivers. I mean, we had some decent production at running back over the last few years, but it hasn't really been top of the line. So, but at the same time, you get a quarterback, and a lot of these problems can kind of fix themselves if you have a guy who's just able to manufacture points consistently and just get down the field, create explosive plays. So in terms of Drake Maye, I mean, he's a very athletic guy. He'd be fun. I think Sean would do a lot of interesting things with him. It'd be...
I think you're stretching the field vertically a hell of a lot more.
Definitely. The playbook would be opened significantly more, I think, than it was this year. So I don't know really at this point. I'm kind of in between. The whole season I was like, yeah, do whatever it takes to go up and get Caleb. But now it's just like Henry's point. Mahomes is going to be here for this long. Let's just try and build a beast of a team, top to bottom.
Give you a couple zags. Potentially the best, just like pure thrower of the football down the field in this draft. I think you could make that argument. You give the fans hope that you're building towards something, which has been missing for quite some time. It sounds like NFL teams are not like stoked about next year's QB class. And I know, that's not like me taking shots at CU. That's not me taking, I'm not starting anything. Shadour's great. I like Quinn Ewers. I don't love Quinn Ewers.
No.
Right.
But outside of Shadour, you look at that next QB class, if you kick the can down the road again, at what point are we addressing the position? So it's tough to give up that much capital, and I think it doesn't bring you any closer to contention right now. Also, though, I don't know if it matters what you do at this first-round pick in terms of being actually more competitive right now. Next year is probably going to be like a 500 year at best, depending on which, fill-in quarterback we end up with, or Russell Wilson, or whatever the hell happens. It's not going to be fun. As a season ticket holder, I'm just really dreading it, to be honest with you. Got that invoice, another price increase, 9 long years since the Super Bowl.
Since the playoffs.
But I do think that is a factor, at least to an extent, with this team. I know you can't make all of your team building decisions around, hey, we need some juice around this franchise, but 9 years is a long time. And I think there is something to be said about if you can land that quarterback that you can talk yourself into, this is the guy of the future. I think it's easier to eat the next year or two with a rookie quarterback from the fans' perspective than it is to have the, Case Keenum situation that we've had 6 times now in the last 7 years.
Yep. And the odds are, you take Drake Maye, he's not worth all that. Odds are you take Penix or Nix or McCarthy or any of those guys. The odds of you hitting on the quarterback you draft are just incredibly slim. But at the same time,
it was the same odds for Mahomes.
Exactly. That's how odds work, and you're never going to find one if you don't try. The answer is not trade for Justin Fields, because there's a tier of quarterback that will never become available. I guess Tom Brady did as a 40-year-old, but that's a little different.
It took him 20-some years though to become available.
Exactly. And so if you want to find a quarterback, there's only one way to do it, and that's to draft him in the first round.
Or have them force a trade to you, or have a generational injury where their drug addict owner gives up on him. But other than that, you got to draft him.
Exactly. So the question just do you take the risk now? And if you do, and it doesn't work this year, do you take another one next year? Can you commit a couple years, or do you want to build a team and take one next year, the year after?
And even if he is good, can you build a competent enough team around him to see that he comes to fruition? It's the old, Josh Allen debate. Would Josh Allen have become Josh Allen in Denver under Vic Fangio? I don't know. As somebody that watched him a lot at Wyoming, he progressed a lot under Dable.
Would he have just been benched after a year or two? Anything is possible there.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about going and getting a quarterback, this was the first year we've had a quarterback with who had the biggest cap hit on the team win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it took Mahomes to do that.
Exactly.
This isn't a thing that is really replicable. You need that cost-controlled first-round quarterback to really not only build a competitive team, but just having that control is what allows you to just do so many other moves and just maneuver around the draft board and make trades in free agency and all this stuff. So,
yep, that's who wins Super Bowls. It's teams with quarterbacks on rookie deals, or Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. I guess you have Stafford in there too, but again, he wasn't getting market value at that point either.
Knife to your back, yes or no? You're okay with this deal? Not okay with this deal?
I think it'd be a bad decision, but it'd be a fun bad decision.
Yeah, exactly.
I would.
Well said.
I think when it first happened, I'd be like, no, and then about 30 seconds later, I'd be like, oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
But that's the thing; those rookie quarterbacks are never as fun as you think they are.
That is true.
You wind up, even the good ones. There's moments where you're just like, oh my god, this guy sucks. Who was the last rookie quarterback who was actually
CJ Stroud this year?
Damn, there's one. But yeah, other than CJ Stroud, like there hasn't been one.
Like if you're the Steelers,
CJ Stroud.
If you're the Steelers, then like I know that's a weird draft class, but like you got Kenny Pickett, and it's like local kid, like they got all excited and stuff, and then what? 12 games, maybe even a little over a year, and they're just like,
now there's the Kirk Cousins rumors that he's going to end up there, and the Vikings could be in the JJ McCarthy range, and that's where it really gets interesting for a team like Denver. If you want a quarterback, you may have to move up.
Yep.
Because, as we look at a lot of these projections, this PFF one, this has Williams going 1 to Chicago, Denver trading up, taking Drake Maye with the Washington pick at 2. Jaden Daniels goes number 3 to the Patriots.
McCarthy at 10
is
too.
Drake Maye, you seemed a little bit hesitant. Would Drake Maye even be your QB2? Or would Jaden Daniels?
I still go Jaden Daniels. I still do. There's just so much to like. Obviously, like all the physical tools. I guess he's a little bit small, so you can factor that in. But there's just, he gets rid of the ball quickly. Like he's fast. The ball comes out fast. Solid arm. Like best passer rating of anybody. Like everybody wants to talk about Bo Nix and his completion percentage. So many of those are such short passes. Like Jaden Daniels, I think statistically was the best deep ball passer on top of that. Now, again, like you look at the way Drake Maye throws it and some of that sort of stuff, and you're like, maybe I go that way. But like we just look at that complete package, I still go Jaden Daniels.
I'm probably still Drake Maye at QB2. Plans to dig in over this next week. I think we're actually going to dig into the quarterback class and do rankings and all that stuff next week. So I just look at what Drake Maye's done over the last few years, coming in, starting as a young player. He's got underrated athleticism. I think he can make every throw on the field. To Hank's point, if this happened, it'd be a little like, oh no, here we go. Like it's actually happening. But then you always get excited. You have to.
We'll talk about it next week. My wheels are spinning now, and I'm like, do I like this move more to trade up for Drake Maye, or do I like sitting and landing maybe like a JJ McCarthy at 12?
Well, in this mock, JJ went 10th overall.
And that's where it's going to be interesting. His stock is flying through the roof, and we said that it would, which, even though it's a gamble, like you're projecting on him to show a lot more than he's shown when you look at his raw tools. It's just not that shocking. I did want, before we move on, we had a comment here from Jose. Cost control quarterback is another argument to draft the quarterback in the first round for the 5th-year option, even at 32. I do think you're right. My only point that I was saying earlier is that even with a cost-controlled quarterback with your cap deficit, these next couple of years, you're not fielding a competitive team. And so you're banking on trading up. You're selling the future, basically. You have to hit. And then on top of that, after these 2 years, you have like a 2-year window, 3 years maybe, where you can be competitive before you have to re-sign them. So my whole thing is like, yes, you want that 5-year window, but are you going to waste 40% of that 5-year window anyways? I don't know.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But again, like it's also
you have to
been
make a
9 years,
sacrifice
like,
at some point.
Exactly.
So,
it's not going to be perfect.
If it was easy, all the teams with QBs. Let's get into the DJ top 50. And then we'll move on, get into some guys that we hope end up falling to the Broncos in the 3rd round. What kind of stands out to you on this one, Jake?
Really right at the top. He says Caleb Williams 1st overall. I think there's just been a lot of talk about whether Caleb is QB1, and everyone's got their favorites when it comes to draft analysts. But when DJ says it, man, this guy's so plugged into the league. He talks to decision makers. He talks to scouts. He's been a scout. I just trust his judgment a lot more than anyone else's. So him having Caleb at QB1, 1st overall player, is just a little validating, I think.
You know what also is validating? When you sit down and you have an ice-cold Breck brew. Validates every decision you've made.
Look at this guy.
I got to get the ad read in before we switch. So I got to hit this one real quick, and I love it. There's nobody better than Breckenridge Brewery. They have been with us since day one. Hank and I, 5-6 years ago, we were doing pods, doing Breck reads. Yep. Nothing has changed, and that's because they're as Colorado as it gets. They have a love and passion for making good beer. Try out some of my favorites: Avalanche Amber Ale, Broncos Country Pale Ale, Funslinger. Check out the Breck Beer Locator at breckbrew.com to find a brew near you. Also want to shout out Natures of Colorado. They are the premier dispensary in northeastern Colorado. There are 4 convenient locations: Log Lane, Village, Garden City, Sedgwick, and Milliken. They are the go-to dispo in northeastern Colorado. Save time by ordering online at naturescolorado.com. Stay cozy in your car. Pick up conveniently at the drive-thru. Use the code for an $85 any shelf ounce. They also have exquisite extracts, 2 gram buckets for $15. Remember to use that code DNVR online or mention DNVR in stores. Go ahead.
Oh,
sorry.
Just so back to Caleb.
Yeah.
I mean, someone, I don't remember who, posted like a Twitter thread yesterday of like some of his most absurd throws. And it's been a while since I've went back and watched Caleb Williams and just seeing all that stuff. It's just, I don't know. You got to have this guy QB1 in my opinion. I understand if you have questions about the structure or him playing within structure, but man, there's just not many people that move like that can throw the ball like that can extend the plays like that at quarterback.
Surprised at all that you have receivers at 2 and 3 with Marvin Harrison Jr. 2, Roma Dunze 3?
So that my big surprise is that Brock Bowers is number 8. For a while there, it felt like he was, probably Marvin Harrison Jr.'s top non-quarterback.
Right.
But Brock Bowers right there, if not just number 2, So to see him down behind Odunze, behind Terrion Arnold, behind Malik Neighbors, that surprised me a little bit. But I do think, I think I've said on this podcast, sometimes I get them run together, but he's just a little bit small, which again, like modern tight ends, that's kind of what you're looking for in the NFL. You probably put on a little bit of weight. But he definitely is a type of tight end. He could turn out to be your George Kittle, Travis Kelce, do-it-all type. He won't be Gronk. He'll never be that big. But he does lean receiving, whereas coming into the season, I looked at him more as he can do anything. Like, you ask him to block, you ask him to pass. And
he's
still
not
can't
Gronk. I mean, he can block, but...
He's not Gronk.
Yeah.
And he never will be Gronk. And he still could be like a Kittle, but... It isn't so clear cut.
So
that he's
nasty
a freak.
In the trenches, man.
Exactly, and that's what I wonder about, because that's the real value, is somebody who can do both. That's how you get teams into mismatches. But there's a bunch of those little flags with Brock Bowers, starting with the fact that he's a tight end.
Yeah.
And these guys just have not really been hitting of late. I know they've been college football superstars, but the Madden draft style picks where you invest and you kind of break the rules, and where they've taken tight ends and running backs, and Atlanta's been the main culprit here. But
you have Sam Laporta on the other hand, though, who comes in as a third-round pick and is the best rookie tight end we've seen.
But isn't that the argument why you should wait? Is you can get a Trey McBride at 55
Definitely.
or a Sam Laporta in the third round?
Well, then to go back to that then, off your wide receiver take, 2 and 3 with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Roma Odunze. I think there's 12 wide receivers in this top 50. I mean, you mentioned Malik Neighbors up there in the top 10, but I mean, the last guy on this list is Malachi Corley, who Dre loves talking about. We've talked about him quite a bit recently. Lad McConkey's in there, Xavier Worthy.
Crazy.
What?
I wasn't expecting Lad McConkey in the top 50. We watched
he
like
the
this.
Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he totally did. And I was going and watching, and I was like, you know what? If he's still there, like 4th, 5th round, like Broncos need to snag him. And then this comes out, and I was like, oh, well, they should absolutely snag him if he's there at that point.
Yep.
But yeah, it's interesting though, because he does. To me, he's a slot receiver. Like, I know he probably can do some outside stuff, and maybe he's like Cooper Kupp and not just like Julian Edelman or whatever. Even if he's Julian Edelman, I guess you take him in the second round, you're thrilled. But that style of receiver, the route runner, separator, underneath, catch everything, that hasn't been what's been valued in the draft in the past.
Keon Coleman, I think he's kind of had a fall down. He's at 38 in this one. I thought he was one of the most impressive wide receivers, through the season, like when we were in the thick of it. So he's kind of had to fall down, but I don't think it's very unexpected, because he's one of those just like bigger frame physical wide receivers who's going to win jump balls at the catch point.
Jose in the comment section brings up that the Broncos have not had a true slot receiver since 2014, which is probably true.
Totally. And I mean, that's kind of what they're missing at this point is, I mean, you wonder, like Tim Patrick could maybe fill some of that. But again, it's still be a little bit different style. You liked seeing, Marvin Mims in the slot, but like speed slot is kind of like your curveball, your changeup, not necessarily like your fastball, which it'd be nice to have somebody like that. Tavondre Sweat being number 48, that surprised me. I would have had him much higher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really?
I thought he was super impressive at the Senior Bowl.
I'm surprised he was at 48.
Yeah.
He's just, I mean, it's a challenge for offensive linemen to move that guy.
He stood out for sure when you watch some of the highlight videos. Do you like Roman Wilson or McConkey better? Because Wilson's a guy who had a nice week.
Yeah, Wilson did have a nice week. Interesting kind of contrast between the two because McConkey, I think, did more during the season, but, Roman Wilson comes out at the Senior Bowl, and the guy's catching everything. He's routing these people up.
I think he gives you a little bit of versatility. I think you could put him inside or outside.
Yeah, so... I mean, there's probably gonna be a decent margin between them where they get drafted. I think at least a round or so. But I love both players. I'd be down for either player really to be on the Broncos.
And if you take JJ McCarthy in the first round, definitely Roman Wilson over Lat McConkey in that case.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Wild pokes. Sweat got handled well by Wyoming. It was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. So maybe the Rams will be able to do the same. I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath, but
it's all right.
We'll see. Any other takeaways? I think that's the main ones from the top 50. Cornerback 1, Terrion Arnold, who he has 6, may not be in Denver's range at 12. He's been a guy who's been pretty commonly.
Your guy Quinyon Mitchell, 19.
I still think he might be my cornerback 1. And I know that's a little controversial because Arnold is so strong. I just love how aggressive he is. I think the last one I would say, though, is Talisi Fuaga, the Oregon State offensive tackle, comes in at number 11. We talked about him, Dre and I did last week, and just how he's a mauler in the run game. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if he's a left tackle. He feels like a right tackle to me, and I don't know if I love that at 12. Mm-hmm. But I also, if you could just get a guy that's going to be your starting right tackle for the next 8 to 10 years and eliminate some of the instability that we've had the last couple years there, I'm intrigued. It's not the sexy pick, but man, he's a mauler.
The quarterbacks after the top 3, you've got Bo Nix, 23, JJ McCarthy, 27, and Michael Penix Jr., 40. Mm-hmm. I was kind of curious, it's interesting to me the gap between the top 2 and the second 2, top 2's a lot closer together.
Yeah. Seeing Penix up here at 40, though, is kind of a little validating in itself, too, because I think anyone watches him and goes, this guy has incredible talent, is one of the most talented quarterbacks in this class. But it does come down to the age, the injuries, some throwing over the middle stuff that has been talked about him recently. But if he's a top 50 player here by DJ standards, then I'm expecting this guy to at least go around there. I don't think he's going to have this significant fall that a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Unless something gets really weird with Mac. Also, he hasn't been hurt in a long time.
Yeah, no, he played the last 2 years completely fine, I think. He got a little banged up in the natty and stuff, but
the fact that he didn't leave that game is actually kind of crazy. Yeah. Every time he got hit in that second half, I was like, oh, he's done. Yep. Oh, he's done. Yep. Oh, he's done. But he just kept getting back up.
We got a question from Wolfgang Paco. Is JJ Penix or Nix really an upgrade over a day 2 QB? I think JJ is. And Penix, in terms of the thrower of the football, yes. But it's just, can you keep him healthy because his mobility is going to be so limited?
Also, JJ's probably a lock for the first round.
JJ's going to go top 10.
Yeah. Penix and Nix might be day 2 quarterbacks.
It's a good point.
There's a good chance that at least one of them falls out of the first round. Mm-hmm. So, compare him to day 2 quarterbacks. That's kind of probably what they are.
Yeah, I've seen some Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt hype kind of coming up recently. So, I think that's really... I don't think we're getting too excited about Joe Milton right now or Jordan Travis
I really want to.
Joe Milton?
When you watch the best things he did, you're
Bazooka.
Like, wow. Yeah. That, he'll throw the ball 80 yards or something. Mm-hmm. He's so big and he runs and moves so well. But yeah, there's just way too many horrible things that he did that you just can't ignore.
Yes.
Paxton Lynch moves well and could throw a ball about 100 yards too.
It's true.
I want to get to the Cynthia Frelund NFL Network mock that Hank sent us. It's based on it's out there, but it's not an opinion based one. It's based on her rating system, which Hank knows a little bit more about than me. I can't explain it, but they have Joe Alt going number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams goes number 2 to his hometown Commanders. But that's just where it gets started. There's all kinds of chaos.
It's crazy. It's fun though, because what I enjoy about it is that the NFL has their next gen stats, but they're just not useful for all of us because they'll have a list of the fastest ball carriers in this week. And you're like, I don't care about that. If there was a way to make it accessible, that would be awesome. But Cynthia working for NFL Network, she's one of the few people who just gets access to the raw data and can do what she wants with it, and also takes advantage of that because she's smart enough to, whereas a lot of people just say like, oh, he's fast, look at the number.
Right.
He's fast. He's real fast.
Exactly.
He makes fast people look not fast.
Or like they'll put the percentages on the catch. It's like, oh, there's a 2% chance that was going to be cut. It's like, what the hell does that even mean?
I know.
Like, that's not how that works.
Reference went just right over the head there. Keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what she does, she has like her whole model that she builds, and again, like honestly nerd stuff to like get all the details in there,
Yep.
and then makes the picks based on what benefits them the most based on her model, which is just a much more interesting approach. And it means that it's all going to be way off, but it is interesting that her model would say the way for the Bears to win the most games next year will be to take Joe Alt with the first overall pick, because it makes sense when you really think about it, because it's like Justin Fields probably not as good as Caleb Williams, maybe based on the model. You don't really know because she didn't write the difference. But by
You have an established quarterback though,
Exactly.
versus banking on a rookie.
Exactly. And so you at least have like not as much of a downgrade by keeping Justin Fields, that Joe Alt can cancel that out.
Cooper DeJean goes to the Broncos with the 12th overall pick in this model.
Yeah. Which
That's too rich for me. I love Cooper DeJean. He's like, especially if you would trade back to the early 20s guy, I'm all about it. 12 feels a little rich. What do you think?
I mean, had a great year, I think, until he got hurt. Obviously,
That's the thing. It's
that
just
punt
it's the
return
injury.
lives in my mind. The one that I
The
can't
one that
remember
got taken away.
Yeah, I can't remember which game it was, but super athletic guy. I think that's a perfect complement to PS2 on the other side. Just someone who can really be a ball hawk and try and take advantage of all the targets that they would potentially see.
Could he be
Little
cornerback too
rich.
for you, injury aside? I know you can't. That's a huge factor. It happened late in the season too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's hard for me to put him.
I'd
over
still rather have
Mitchell and
Quinyon
the
Mitchell
Bama
at 12,
kids, yeah.
Terrion Arnold. I'd take him over to McKinstry.
yeah.
I think he's a
also-
little bit more versatile. I think McKinstry's going to run better, but I think DeJean, you can play him outside. I think you could play him in the slot. I think,
And in this mock, McKinstry was the last pick in the first round. They have him falling all the way down there, or Cynthia does.
I think he could maybe even fall out of the first,
It's
depending on
possible.
how he runs at the combine.
And the other thing with DeJean, I think it's easier to make the case for him to be the Broncos number 2 versus just the number 2 in a vacuum.
Right.
Just because he's such like a ball hawk. Like
Yeah.
stylistically, I think he fits well in Denver, but I still probably wouldn't have him. And for what's worth, Cynthia said, so he takes straight lines at a rate in the top 18th percentile. So in
like acceleration.
no, like when he's moving, he moves in straight lines the most often.
Oh,
so as a
okay.
DB, that means that you're
Yeah.
reading where you want to be and just going straight there instead of like slowly getting into like reading.
Yep.
I don't know. I like
No,
the fact that it's like it would be so nice if we could have access to all of these things.
sure.
But I get why it'd be hard to. But yeah, it's interesting.
I may have a next gen connect.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Worked with him at SAS.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to get into that.
Nice little flex there.
Yeah.
Wolfgang Paco says, George Payton reminds him of an old Dan O'Dowd, the Rockies GM back in the day. Covets overpriced arms, blow all the money. Oh no, the Broncos morphed into a Montfort organization.
I hate this.
I don't know. I think I understand the logic of what he's saying, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I also think that as somebody who's now gone full circle through this whole miserable Rockies experience, I think we maybe underappreciated Dan O'Dowd, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I don't know if you've watched the Rockies of late. Like at least back then we had farmcists. Like we had players that would eventually leave. Now, I mean, there's just nothing. It's a barren wasteland. But again, feels pretty similar over at the Broncos stadium. Let's get into these third round targets. Some guys we hope are going to fall to the third round. A lot of these guys, may very well go earlier. You want to start, Hank, since this was your idea?
I threw out Tavondre Sweat earlier. Again, like it's kind of a dream scenario, but the fact that he's listed at 48 in there means that a slip to the 60s isn't that crazy, especially given the way people look at defensive tackles, defensive linemen. I think that him and Jerzon Newton are the two defensive linemen that if the Broncos somehow came away with one of them, I would lose my mind. I'd be like,
He's
oh
a
my God.
freak.
Exactly. Like both of those guys are crazy. Now, Jerzon Newton, he's not going to be there when the Broncos make their second pick. He's just not.
Maybe he has a Laramie Tunsil moment.
Yeah, I guess it's crazy. Post
Send
a picture
him
of the
the gas
bong.
mask.
You never know. But yeah, like maybe they trade down, they could make that pick. But Tavondre Sweat, there's a chance that people make that much of a mistake. But I think that's where I go first, just because freaks in the trenches, especially after that Super Bowl, seems like it could be very important.
I'll start on the defensive side of the ball. I think edge rushers really deep this year, and even these guys in like the back end of like the 100 overall range on the website we're looking at here, NFL Mock Draft Database. Brandon Dorlus played a lot of good football at Oregon. Jonah Ellis was Utah's best edge rusher last year. I think he battled through injuries. Marshawn Nealon, he was actually a Buff at one point, and then went back to Western Michigan. He's actually in DJ's top 50 at number 49. Gabriel Murphy on the opposite side of Leatu Latu was a great player, I think, as well. So I don't want to take your guys.
No, you're good.
Mo
Kamara obviously would.
Yeah.
Him and Jonah Ellis would be my two edge rusher guys that I think third round, especially, just make a ton of sense. Relentless motors. I think they come in day one, can contribute for you, stop the run, rush to the passer. I don't know if their traits are quite as top end as some of these guys in the top 5, but I think when you look at the value and the production that you're going to get there, I really like those guys quite a bit. Some of the receivers, you hope a guy like Xavier Worthy falls like late third round, early fourth. I don't love him quite as much as I do some of these other guys. He feels one of those dudes that's going to shine in the underwear Olympics because he runs so fast, but does it actually translate to football? We shall see. He had some big plays, though.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tight ends I like. Cade Stover being probably top of the list at that spot. Just so strong. Like, he seems like somebody who can just like be too much of a man for a defense, and that's like a good trait to have. Jaheim Bell also fits that category. Eric All. Jatavian Sanders probably gone by then, but he would also be on that list.
Jared Wiley, the TCU tight end, was one of the standout players in that CU-TCU game in week 1. So there's
a bunch of those guys around there. And I think offensive linemen, too. Brought up Christian Haynes after the Senior Bowl, the guard from Connecticut. He's a freak. But it's such a deep tackle class. I'm curious who's around at that point. Because there's a chance they all just get swooped up in the second round. But when you dig through, obviously, like Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, like those guys are potentially not even getting out of the top 10. Fuaga, Latham, Guyton, Mims, Jordan Morgan,
the kid out of BYU.
The kid out of BYU is what we'll say.
I thought Patrick Paul was great at the Senior Bowl, too.
Yeah, so you have like this whole list where if any of those guys are the pick in the third round, I'd love it. And I think that there's a chance that the guy who we're saying is like, oh, he's the number 4 tackle right now, by then could be the number 9 tackle who's still on the board.
I'll go to cornerback as well. I think it's a pretty deep cornerback class. We just spent some time talking about the guys at the top of the draft, but Mike Sanders still out of Michigan. All that guy did was make plays this year. Josh Newton, you go back to this point last year, I think he was one of the top-rated cornerbacks in all of college football going into the 23 season. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. Both of the Missouri cornerbacks, I think, are really good too. So, Chow Smith-Wade is there at Washington State. He had a good year also. So it's a deep class in that regard as well.
I'm surprised how low Wade is listed on here. I'll throw out a linebacker. I like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. out of Clemson, a guy who a year ago is being talked about as, a first-round pick. Now is kind of being projected more around that 50 to 60 range. If he could fall to you around 75, I love the value there. I think he would make things interesting, come in and contribute.
Yep. Michael Penix Jr.? I don't think it's crazy for him to be. I think if he gets out of the first round, third round is very much.
Where would you set his over/under?
Does he go top 50?
Yeah, like 50.5, or are you going?
I would go
lower?
like 32.5.
Okay.
Yep. Inside the first round or outside the first round. Yeah.
I think I'd rather do. I think he's going outside the first round. So to me, it's more. Does he go in the second round or later?
Oh, okay.
Does he free fall?
Yeah, if he's there in the third, and that's just such a weird scenario because you probably didn't draft a quarterback in the first round, unless you do like the Robert Griffin III, Kirk Cousins thing, which worked out pretty well. You're probably running it back with Russ. Yeah, Niners also. Yeah, but you're probably running it back with Russ, and in that case, a third-round quarterback. That's great. I mean, that fits pretty well, and it would allow you, obviously, to use that first-round pick somewhere else. I got one more crazy one. Torrey Taylor?
Not in the third round.
Okay, not in the third. Okay, not in the third. Freak punter, though.
He's awesome, but you can get Ryan
awesome.
Stonehouse was a UDFA.
Definitely. But, I mean, in hindsight, third round for Stonehouse,
Even,
I guess that
even
was
as
that
good
the
as
Quinn
he
Miners
is.
draft?
Yeah.
Third's probably too
I
early.
think you just put too much pressure on these specialists when you take them that high.
With kickers, yes. Punters, like, if you're feeling pressure as a punter, like, what are you doing?
But the risk just doesn't seem worth the reward.
That's fair.
You know what
You're
I mean?
probably right. Third round, you shouldn't be drafting a punter. But, I mean, if you did, I mean, this would... Torrey Taylor's the guy.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
He is awesome.
I'll go back to running back real quick, too. I think it's a sneaky deep running back class. Looking at this list we're looking at here, Braylon Allen, Bucky Irvin, Will Shipley, Audric Estime. I thought Audric Estime many times was the best running back week-to-week basis in college football. So Cody Schrader at Missouri, he had a fantastic year. So Frank Gore Jr., lots of guys.
Was Cody Schrader that kid that went viral on YouTube like in like the 5th or 6th grade?
For what?
I don't know.
Like having a sick football highlight. Somebody out there will know what I'm talking about. There was some kid named Cody back when like the heart of YouTube, back before it was like monetized.
The OG days.
Yeah, it was just chaos out there.
The golden days.
Yeah. We got a question from Wolfgang Paco. He would like a corner. Don't know what's up with Moss. You're on the beat, Hank. What's up with Riley Moss?
So he was injured in camp, so he didn't get a lot of reps there. So he's behind the 8 ball already. When he did play, so the second half of the season, he was their dime. So he was out there, which is only like 4 or 5 snaps a game. And he says, I had to talk to him a little bit. I'm Torrey Taylor's teammate. We actually talked a lot about him. He says he's incredible. We all know that. Yeah, he was saying it was actually pretty great to be able to play on the inside because he's always played on the outside. And so for the first half of the season, you're thinking outside, and to be able to come in and see how the defense works. He says that's when things really clicked for him. Was he was so focused on like, how do we do it out here, that once he moved inside, it was like, oh, now I kind of understand how all the pieces fit together. Great special teamer. One, maybe their best when you factor in the penalties that Tremon Smith had. Next year, though, you hope that he's ready to take that step. You would imagine baseline, he's your backup nickel. Because Jaquan's kind of taken that job, and that might be where he fits best. And then he's competing for the starting job as it stands now, which, again, we just haven't seen a whole lot. He played well when he was in, but, again, it's like 4 snaps a game for 6 games. It's not worth all that much.
Didn't feel like he did enough this year to kind of not only just secure a spot, but to, like, relieve the Broncos' decision-makers' minds that they're set at cornerback.
And it's so close, though. Like, going into last season, you would have thought if Jaquan plays the way he does, you got Pat, you got Jaquan, you trust Damari Mathis and Riley Moss, one of them to be your second cornerback. But with Damari playing how he did and Riley just not playing all that much at all, like it does feel like you need to do something there. And last year the something was Fabian Moreau, who was really good for a bit, but then was really bad after that. So like I would imagine, just given the cap situation, the most likely scenario is that you get a veteran, a cheap veteran, like $1 million, $2 million, and it's veteran versus Moss versus Mathis. And if things don't go well in the first few weeks, you figure something out.
Before we get out of here, Jake, thoughts on Zach Zinter as a third-round target?
Oh, man. I mean, I love the player. Was an absolute road grader. I think he was part of the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line those previous 2 seasons. They had a great year again this year, too.
I think they just had to give it to somebody else, to be honest.
For sure. I think he just broke his leg, though, right?
Yes.
So all for it then. Look, broken bones are not torn ligaments. Like, these are things that you can bounce back from. So I'm all for it. I think he'd be a fantastic pick. I think he's going to be a good pro football player.
Sticks and stones may break your bones, but Jake would still draft you.
Absolutely.
Just looking at it, Riley was on the field for 21 passes, only got targeted once. It's what you like to see. It wasn't a catch. Can't complain about that.
All right.
Can't complain about that. Indeed. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Dre will be back with us. Shout out to the presenting sponsors, Natures of Colorado. Thank you to everybody in the comments section for rocking with us. We'll be back each and every week talking different position classes, the latest in the draft world, combine, all that once we get to it. Much love, y'all. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.